All right, a couple weeks ago, I gave a presentation on the topic beneficial ownership information, or BOI, and I thought I'd kind of just create a video so people can kind of go back and, reference a couple of slides. This topic, it's been around, and I'll cover this, but it really kind of goes into effect starting this year, 1/1 of 2024. If you go to this website here, fincen.gov/BOI-FAQS, you'll see it's very comprehensive. And there, if you were to print it out, there's, could be 100 pages. This presentation here is probably maybe 10 slides. So I'm condensing a lot of this information in kind of like need to know and action steps. So that's the whole point of this video and this presentation here. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, or if you have my contact information, if you're a client of ours, feel free to send me a note. But I'll kind of give you a history of this and then talk about next steps and what you need to do if this applies to you. So kind of what is it? Beneficial ownership information. This dates back to 2021. Where Congress passed this Corporate Transparency Act, okay? And it refers to identifying information about individuals who directly or indirectly own or control a company. And essentially what they're trying to do is fight against money laundering, terrorism, human drug trafficking, counterfeiting, essentially kind of people that are creating entities within entities, all these shelters, and they want to just track everything. Right. So if person A owns all these different LLCs, they want to know that. And as part of wanting to know that, there's some information that they want from you if you kind of follow, if you kind of fall within the parameters of what this Corporate Transparency Act relates to. This is not a tax or IRS filing. This is another compliance thing that you need to do as part of kind of owning a company. So again, non-tax related, non-IRS related, but part of the kind of the U.S. Treasury. Okay. And that's the basis of all this. The next slide here. So due dates. So if you started a company and you owned it prior to January 1st of 2024, this document that you need to complete and fill out is due January 1st of 2025. Okay. They changed this. Originally, it was, 90 days into 2024. So all this would have been due March 31st. Then they kind of said, all right, this is all new. We're gonna extend this out till January 1st. So if you're a company that was incorporated, with the Secretary of State, and you have all that registration that was done before January 1st, 2024, you have essentially a year to kind of complete and file all this. Now, if you're a new company in 2024, you have 90 days to file this form. And I'm going to cover a slide if you don't file it, what happens. And it's pretty steep. It's pretty harsh. And I will tell you, and I think I have this in one of the slides, there is some lawsuits out there about, can Congress kind of get this information from, business owners and stuff. Now, if you're a new business, so if you're thinking about starting a business and you're a new business in 2025, you have 30 calendar days to file this form. So they went from, if you're a new business 2024 to 90 days, from 90 days to 30 days. Okay. So again, if you start a new business in 2024, you got 90 days to complete this form. And if you're thinking about starting a business in 2025 or future years, you got 30 days to kind of file this form. There is no fee to file this form. So unlike, the Secretary of State, when you register with Delaware, with California, New York, all these states have these registration fees. There is no fee to file this form if you do it yourself. Okay. Now, here's tip number one. The clock starts on these due dates here. The clock starts when you actually receive notice from the state that it's been registered. Okay. So as you know, when you start a business, you have to register in the state that you're doing business in. Now, for those of you that are registered in Delaware, that's going to be when your clock starts. Okay. So you might be registered as your main state is Delaware, but you're registered in all these other states. You're going to go back to the main state, the Delaware state. But remember, and this is a side topic here, if you're starting a business, you got to register in the state that you're doing business. So just keep that in mind there. So it's the registration. So you want to go back to the Secretary of State. Like in Illinois, for example, if you go to the Illinois Secretary of State, you type in your company name, it will tell you when your date was registered. And every year you have to file that annual report. So if you're a new business in 2024, you register, and sometimes it might take a day or two. Once you get confirmation from that state that you're in their system, that's when the clock starts on this 90 days. All right, here's some of the facts here. So reporting doesn't happen every year, just once. So unlike, like tax returns where you do this every year, you're just going to do this form once. Okay, that's it. However, I think I have this in another slide. If you bring on additional owners and the ownership changes, then you're going to have to update the form that you already filed. So if you're a business of two, nothing's changed in your business in terms of like the ownership, right? You might have hired employees and stuff, which is fine. But if your ownership hasn't really changed, you haven't bought any companies or anything, then you don't need to do anything. You just do this form once. And I put the websites here. So this is where, because there's a couple websites, this is where you're going to do the filing. And there's a couple steps when you do this online. And it's actually pretty simple if you have all the information that you need to file. And I have a slide on that. So you just want to make sure you have all that information ready and available before you start this kind of quote unquote application. Then there's this other site that's connected to this, the FinCEN ID. Okay. If you get your FinCEN ID, so if you're one of the owners of your business and you get your FinCEN ID, completing this form makes it a lot faster. Essentially, you're registering, I don't want to say you're getting like another social security number, but you're putting your personal information in, the companies that you own and everything, and then you're going to get like this code back, and you're going to put that information in this form. You don't have to do this, okay? But if you do this, it makes completing this form a lot faster. So that's another tip there. So who's considered a beneficial owner? So beneficial owners do not include, minor children, employees, creditors, inheritors. And there's no limit on the number of BOIs to report. So number of, beneficial owners. You can have 2, you can have 1, you can have, thousands. Okay. It just depends on your company. So who's a BOI? So BOI is someone that exercises substantial control over the reporting company, right? So you got a CFO, CEO, COO, someone that has influence on company decisions, appoint new senior officers. A BOI could be on the board of directors, okay? And a BOI is also someone that owns at least 25% of the company's interests, okay? So you look at the equity. So that includes like equity, stock, capital, profit loss, voting rights, options. So again, that 25%. And that's the key right there. And then you have these other individuals too, that might also kind of consider to be a BOI, even though they may own less than 25% of the company. Okay. And then here are the type of companies that are required to file. So if you're an LLC, if you're an S-Corp, if you're a C-Corp, right, you kind of fall in this bucket of, we may need to file this. Okay. Now here's the exemption of the reporting. I try to condense this, but essentially there's 23 types of businesses that don't have to do this. Okay. There's one here called the large operating companies that employ more than 20 full-time employees in the U.S. and reported more than $5 million in gross receipts and have operating presence at a physical location in the U.S. Okay. So if you have more than 20 employees, you have more than 5 million in gross assets, you're kind of fall in this large operating company, you don't need to file. Publicly traded companies, public accounting firms. But, if you're an accounting firm and you're watching this video, if you look at the details, in that website I referred to earlier, these are accounting firms that have clients that file with the PCAOB. So they have public clients. But if you're a small accounting firm, you're not part of this exemption. So it's public accounting firms, insurance companies, investment companies, VC fund advisors, tax-exempt organizations, right? Nonprofits, 501c3s. And I'm going to jump down to the bottom here. An inactive entity. So if you started this business in 2020 and there hasn't been any activity since 2020 and you had less than, I think it's $1,000 of revenue, it's kind of like a dormant, entity. It's not operating. You don't need to file this. But again, I would highly encourage you to kind of look at that FAQ just to make sure, because I kind of remember the date or the year of 2020, that rings a bell. Meaning that if you had activity in 2021, you don't fall under this inactivity. So I think there's like a couple years of inactivity. I think it starts with 2020. Sole proprietors. Okay. Again, you can be a single member LLC. As you know, with a single member LLC, you got to register with your state. Okay. With the fact that you register with your state means that you're not exempt and you're going to have to file the BOI report. But if you're a sole proprietor, sole proprietors can start doing business. They don't need an EIN from the IRS. They just use their social security numbers. They don't need to register with their state. Okay. So if you're a sole proprietor, you don't fall under this because you never registered with the state. And if a company closes before 1/1/2024, there's no filing. But again, you need to look at the FAQs on the specifics if you kind of fall under this bucket here. So information required. So a company must disclose the identity of each beneficial owner of the company and each company applicant. So who's an applicant, right? An applicant is the person that files the business registration application, okay, when you first start working in that state. Typically, in our case with our clients, our attorneys are the ones that register our clients in those states. So our attorneys are considered like a company applicant, okay? Sometimes our clients themselves will file. Well, if they're one of the, the owners of the company, they're kind of an applicant and they're owner already. So an individual can provide their information directly to FinCEN, as I mentioned earlier, and you get a unique ID number, and you can use that instead of a passport or driver's license. And that's where I'm talking about speeding up the process. So individuals, full legal name, date of birth, your residential street address, and then your passport, driver's license number, and then you need a copy of those as well. And then for companies, full legal name, trade name, current address, and state of formation, right? I talked about Delaware. So your state of formation is Delaware, but then you registered in Wisconsin and New York. They just want to know your Delaware information. And then foreign company, the state where you first registered, and then your tax ID number. All right, so by not doing this form, so it's $500 a day in penalties, okay? And there's talks about, going to prison for a couple of years, and then, you can see these dollar amounts here of criminal damages. So it's pretty hefty, and that's why I say you don't want to kind of miss out on this. And then finally here, you might be asking, all right, I don't want to mess this up. Who can do this? And I would encourage you to reach out to your law firms. I know a lot of law firms are doing this, and a lot of law firms also manage a company's cap table, right? Their capital table, all their investors, all the owners and everything. So they have all that information and can do it for you. And I bet you their paralegal team can kind of do it as well. If you want to, save money, I know LegalZoom offers this service, and you can, check out their website. It's BOI reporting. CorpNet is another one. CT Corporation, Tax 1099. You can see the pricing here. The pricing for Tax 1099, that's for each beneficial owner, right? So if you got two, you're probably looking at most $90. Okay. But you don't want to mess this up. It's a very important filing. And again, it's another compliant reporting that a company, as being a business owner, you got to do. So again, any questions, let me know. Thanks again for watching.